Jack and the Pack, the spin-off series that never got its time in the spotlight to truly shine. I adore the Pack. I've made a video talking about the Pack throughout the entire franchise, and while I'll probably always be more intrigued by the world of the engines or the world of tugs, the Pack's character work and setting is truly something special. I've kept having this idea in my head to go over every episode of the Pack and do a somewhat analysis for the episodes. So that's what you're seeing now. But before I get into the spin-off show itself, we of course the start where it all began, Season 6. To get the story of how the Pack began, we have to go all the way back to the 5th season of Thomas & Friends. Britt Allcroft was writing a script for her movie Thomas and the Magic Railroad. Because of this being a movie that would release in theaters, they got the idea to remake the engines in a bigger scale for the big screen. They would end up making Thomas and Percy for test footage. After the test footage was done, it was decided that to redo the entire cast of characters simply cost too much money. So they returned to the Gauge 1 props. Thomas and the Magic Railroad would go through production hell, and with a $19 million budget and only making back $19.7 million, Britt Allcroft had to sadly step down from her own company, with the company name being changed to Ghislaine Entertainment. When it came to making season 6 of Thomas, Britt Allcroft would bring in Phil Fairley as producer. An interviewer, Rosie Murray West, would publish an article in 2001 talking about this new potential series with Birdie the Bus or Harold the Helicopter, potentially having their own shows. With Phil's role as producer, he would end up attending a marketing meeting in New York, where this idea would shift. The marketing team wanted a companion series that would be in the same world as Thomas, but meant for kids 6 to 8 years of age. Due to the market research of the time, Phil's idea of a series about Birdie or Harold shifted to a series about construction vehicles. After he pitched it, the marketing team bought the idea, so the series went into production. Concept artist Rob Galliers would be tasked to make the designs for the characters, and for this original lineup, we would have Jack, who would lose his back arm when it came to making the prop, Alfie, Buster, who would later be renamed to Oliver, with Buster being a name for a different character, Nelson, Kelly, Ned, Byron, Isabella, and Nigel. Oh yeah, and Max. This was the original Pack for Series 6. Nigel would end up being dropped for unknown reasons, but it wasn't due to Nelson's existence, as the crew wanted this to be the next big thing for Thomas. Nigel would have been a mild character, according to Rob Galliers, and he may have been named to Nigel after Nigel Permain, who was the camera assistant. But that's just a theory. When it came to constructing the models, they made the Pack huge! Mainly to fit in all these complicated electronics, which they would need for the Pack, with each character having so many moving parts. And hey, while they're at it, these props scale really well with Magic Railroad's Thomas and Percy. So now they can have engines show up and they don't have to make new models. What a win! These sets for all the Pack episodes are massive. These sets are just so impressive to look at, and these first episodes acting as a two-parter really shows how they wanted this soft pilot to leave a big impact on viewers. When it came to the involvement from Britt Allcroft and David Minton, the other things they did were getting Phil Fairley and David Minton acting as a model consultant. Dave Minton would never direct a single Pack episode, and the director's chair was fulfilled by at the time co-producer Steve Asquith. We don't quite have a name for the Series 6 two-parters, but we got the episodes Jack Jumps In and A Friend in Need. Jack Jumps In is an episode that knows what it is and how long its runtime is. We get introduced to each character pretty well, but not enough to dive into every character. At first it seems like Thomas is going to be the fish out of water, but it's actually Jack being the fish out of water here. Thomas warns Jack about Max. When Jack finally gets there, he's just so excited to help out. He goes to Oliver asking him to help, but Oliver tells him to go to Byron. He goes to Byron, but he's too busy moving stuff in a straight line to need help, so Jack goes to Kelly and Isabella, who tell him to go to the foreman. The foreman introduces Jack to his banksman, who tells him to go help Alfie. So then we get to meet Alfie. Alfie's such a cute little guy, he's so much fun. Alfie gets along well with Jack, and Jack is finally able to work. But then Max shows up, and he tries to scare away Jack, but then Jack stands up to Max, telling him to stop bullying, which works. Then the foreman calls to Oliver to get some stone, but Jack, being so eager to help, picks it up. His banksman tells him to stop, but he doesn't listen. He's just too excited and ends up falling over, along with spilling the load everywhere. Miss Jenny is very disappointed and has Jack sent home for not being safe, and he'll probably be able to make up for it tomorrow. Now, of course, this is a season 6 episode, so the characters have to comfort Jack and tell him that being a good friend is important. Like, okay, we kind of get to see that in the next part. I don't get why we have to have this scene here. A friend in need gives us a quick recap on what happened last time, then gets right into it. Jack is feeling great. He's been working very hard and being very safe, but his first mistake was still in his mind. We get introduced to Ned in this episode, which is so much fun. He's such a well-meaning character, but not the most socially aware. Seeing how Max acts by himself here is really interesting. He's grumpy and somewhat intimidating. He's more like Gordon, but somehow more mean. The foreman calls to Oliver to move some soil, and once again, Jack goes over excited to help. Alfie yells at Jack, but he's too busy to hear. Right before he takes Oliver's load, he thinks about what Miss Jenny said, and lets Oliver take the load. Oliver thanks him, and Alfie, Kelly, and Isabella cheer for him. This is such a nice, subtle character arc for Jack. Though if I was Oliver, I might be feeling a little targeted by Jack, because this is like the second time it's happened to specifically his jobs. Then we get to see Ned trying to follow the rules. His banksman told him to lower his shovel, so he did, and tried his hardest to not mess anything up, but he sadly didn't lower his arm enough, which causes the railway bridge to collapse. Jack jumps right into action and holds the bridge up. Thomas is on his way and he uses all his strength, and he manages to hold it long enough for Thomas to back up, and then the bridge crumbles. Later that night, Jack is sad. He thinks he's upset Miss Jenny again, but she's actually really proud of him. She tells him it's off to the fitters with him tomorrow, and they can't have a front loader with a broken arm. Jack asks if this means that he can stay, and Miss Jenny wouldn't have it any other way. And the episode ends with Thomas being happy for Jack, and that's the pilot episode. These episodes are such a great introduction to the Pack and Packard & Co. Weirdly enough, Nelson never showed up for season 6, even though his model was made at that time. But Nelson would get his time to shine later on. I think Thomas's roles in these episodes are honestly perfect. Like, he shows up just long enough to give the audience an introduction to the universe, but he never overstays his welcome. A lot of people find this Thomas phase to be scary, which I don't disagree with, but I've somewhat warmed up to it over the years. It's not like a pretty phase, but it's what I've learned to be alright with. Maybe I'm just on some new level of copium though. The model work in these episodes is just amazing. All these moving parts on these props and getting to see these massive sets is so wonderful. I find it funny for the Thomas sets, you can tell they didn't really care about them as much as they would for the Pack sets, which I don't blame them. Why would you focus on a Thomas set? They're like, maybe 3? This would be the only Pack episodes Alec Baldwin would end up narrating, as he would leave after Series 6. And this would be the only Pack music released by Mike O'Donnell and Junior Campbell. Even though they did make music for the Pack, it's currently in legal limbo. Would love to hear their score for the actual series itself, but I doubt we'll ever get that. But that was the start of the Pack. It was the start of what could have been a brand new era for the Thomas and Friends franchise.